Today, we're bringing you a special crossover episode on the 19.9 podcast feed. Josh and I recently appeared on the Hoopheads podcast. It was a wide-ranging discussion that our audience is sure to enjoy. Now, on to the show.
Michigan can keep this game to a 19-foot, 9-inch game. Inside that three-point line, it's all theirs. Nice move by Steve Fisher here. Turn it into the 19-9 game.
Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here without my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, but I am pleased to welcome to the podcast tonight from 19.9, Aaron Meyer and Josh Barnett. Guys, welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. Aaron, why don't you go ahead and talk to us a little bit about 19.9, a little bit about your background, and give our audience an idea of where you're coming from in terms of your sports and basketball background.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having us. Appreciate coming on. I've enjoyed listening to your podcast, so glad to be on here. My background with 19.9 stems from Josh and I, what Josh did before 19.9. He was a social studies teacher, and I'm the assistant principal at that school still. So my involvement was born out of just conversations in the hallway. We would go upstairs and just talk hoops. That was an outlet. You talk to kids all day. It is awesome to have an outlet to just talk hoops sometimes.
Absolutely.
And we'd get lost at like his planned periods once in a while when things were slow, weeks were slower, and just decompress with that. Basketball background, I grew up in Indiana, so it's in the DNA here. I like to say, at least. I'm from Northwest Indiana. I played my high school ball at LaPorte High School. My claim to fame is we were in the last single class Final Four. So got to play at the old Hoosier Dome in front of 30,000 people, had kind of a storybook run, and then lost on a last second shot in the finals. But
that one sticks with you for the rest of your life, right?
Oh man,
it
was like a brutal ending. Just missed, my best friend missed 2 free throws right before that, and ended. We were up by 20 at halftime. It's just, you could tell I'm still not over it.
Trust me, I lost a game in my senior year. We didn't even make it as far as you guys did, but lost a game in similar fashion. We were up 3. Team went length of the floor in 3 seconds to tie it with a shot that, to this day, everyone on our team and myself included knows that it was a 2-pointer. The kid's feet were on the line, man. And so I'm not bitter at all, just like you. All right, Josh, tell us a little bit about just what your background is, just to follow up on what Aaron said.
Yeah, like Aaron said, we were both in education, and basically started this company with 3 of my other best friends in Indianapolis in 2011, probably, maybe 2012. Started just as a t-shirt company, basically because we couldn't find the stuff that we wanted, that it wasn't really on the market. About 4 years into it, we started with the retro shorts, and that kind of changed everything. And we kind of pivoted. Once we had the retro shorts under our belt, we kind of pivoted to just being a college basketball company because that's where our passion was. And we had a meeting in Bloomington where we had a bunch of post-it notes stuck up on the wall, and we just kind of like everything that our brand was, and we looked at it and we said, this is pointing towards one thing, and it's college basketball, which was great because that was our passion. And we were trying to spread ourselves too thin, trying to do football and any kind of other sports on t-shirts that we could do to basically get money, to keep our company afloat. And then once we pivoted to college basketball, everything kind of fell in place and took off. And I've since been able to quit teaching and do this full time, which is dope. I love that, even though I miss Meyer and I miss teaching a little bit, but I don't miss him enough.
Kids miss you.
I don't miss him enough enough to say that like I'm not having a great time. Not teaching.
Yeah, understood. Understood. I've been teaching now for, this is my 26th year, something like that. So I can definitely relate to where you're at. So the podcast, just like for you, the 19.9 has become a passion. The podcast has definitely become a passion for me. It's a totally different environment than, the business world or the podcasting world, or however you want to phrase it, is much different than education. I think people who are not themselves in education don't necessarily have an idea of how isolating and difficult it can be at times. You guys mentioned about just being able to have conversations with one another in the hallways or in your classrooms or in between, when you have a break, and people don't understand how much teachers spend, how much time you spend by yourself without that adult interaction. It's one of the things that I used to coach. I was the assistant varsity coach at the school where I teach for, the first 14 or 15 years of my career, and then got out of it as my kids started to be born and grow up a little bit, and wanted to see them doing the things that they were doing. But one of the things I always missed was just sitting in the coach's office, having the kinds of conversations that I'm sure you guys were having with each other in your classrooms and in the hallway. And that's probably what I miss more than anything. And this podcast has really kind of taken the place of those conversations, which has been one of the really fun parts of what I've been able to do. So I have two questions based on what you guys have said to me to this point. First one is, what was the very first product that you guys put out? And then two, where'd you come up with the name?
Josh, you take that. I know the name, and I love this now, so I'm gonna jump in there, even though you could take that. It's the old 3-point line, so 19 feet 9 inches, and we like to enjoy shooting threes coming from Indiana, so that's the name comes from. But I don't know the first product, so I'll be interested to hear this too.
The first product was like a bootleg IU t-shirt that we sold on Facebook, and the guy that designed it, who's no longer with our company, Kevin Spawn, one of my best friends. He's godfather to my daughter Bella. He was over playing with her the day before we launched, and he had one of the shirts up over his shoulder, and he was playing hide and seek with her. She was like 2 at the time, and we lost one of the shirts, so we only had like 24 shirts to sell. And we're doing this all over Facebook because we didn't even have a website at this time, basically just relying on our friends. And so we sold all 24, and we could not find the 24th t-shirt anywhere. And then I found it wedged between the couch where Kevin was hiding from my daughter. It was wedged between the couch and the wall. We eventually found it several hours later. It was a complete I don't know,
frantic scramble
here, but it was a complete crap show.
Gotcha.
Of a launch. But that was the beginning of 19.9, and we still talk about it to this day and laugh about it.
When did you guys get the licensing? Because obviously at the beginning that's something that you didn't have. So when did you go legal, for lack of a better way of saying it?
Yeah, so we tried to, there's that gray area with that stuff big time. And, sometimes you get caught, sometimes you don't. And we always knew that we want to be licensed and we want to be legit. And so we always tried to err on the side of caution with that. And we never used logos or anything. That bootleg IU shirt I was talking about was just a rectangle with all the national championship years on there. So it had five years on there, and it looked like a banner, but it didn't say Indiana University or have any IU logos or any of that stuff. And then the first license that we got was Turning Point. Obviously for our company was Butler. That's why we're always super partial to Butler, and we always try to look out for them and get them what they want, because they were the first ones that gave us a shot when they didn't have to believe in us, and they did, and we're forever grateful for that. And so after we got Butler, that licensing process is a bit of a nightmare. I mean, we're rolling with it now, and we're about to make a big announcement. I don't know when this pod's going to air, but tomorrow we'll be making a big announcement that we got College Vault licensing now.
Awesome.
So we're one of, I want to say, 8 apparel companies that have the College Vault licensing, which opens us up to being able to use a lot of the old logos, but it also opens us up to licensing with some of the really big universities and some of the blue bloods of college basketball that we haven't been able to launch yet. But man, that licensing stuff for the last 6 years has just been an absolute grind, and it's a school by school basis. And we finally crossed that threshold where we have so many licenses now that aren't even launched that we don't have enough time to design all the stuff for right away. So
it's been fun to watch you guys this year, especially because it's been it went from just a hustle and trying to, just put feelers out to almost trying to figure out when to launch things, because before it was okay, we got so-and-so and you're almost ready to launch them soon after that. But now you're having to kind of figure out where to place things because you've got some coming, and it's just to watch the change has been really fun this year.
Who do you guys have to talk to? So when you're trying to do that licensing, who are you talking to at the school when you're doing it on a school by school basis? Who's the contact person? Is it different at every school?
Yeah, sometimes. Now, all big universities are represented by third parties. So you have CLC, which is IMG and Learfield, who merged together to form CLC. They're kind of the big dogs. Then you have Fermata. You have Affinity, which is a new one that has some schools. And you have a few independents. And I know I'm probably forgetting maybe one more agency in there. But a lot of times, we kind of went around the third parties so we could establish relationships with the people at the school, which is usually the licensing director, or if they don't have a licensing department, it's usually the associate SID or somebody in athletics, basically wears a lot of hats. And once you get those people on your side, it gets pretty easy. Now, finding who those people are at the schools, the decision makers at the schools, and getting them to respond and buy in, that's the hustle part of it. But we've met a lot of great LDs, great people, a lot of people that have helped us out. And now we kind of are, we're working hand in hand with CLC through the vault to work with these schools. And now they have become a great asset to us because they reach out to schools on our behalf with what we do. And it has become much, much easier for us, which is something. If we did this podcast last year, I would have harped on how tough it is to get licensing, but that thing has really, really changed in the last 3-4 months for us, which has been awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, I'm sure that puts you guys on a trajectory where if you can expand the offerings that you have beyond the schools that you already have on your website, I'm sure you're just bringing in a whole new set of fans who remember those different teams and want the gear and all that kind of thing. So it just, I'm sure, expands your audience. When you think about working with these schools, what does the design process look like for you guys? How much is the school having input in what you do? And I know in a lot of cases you're creating replicas of those uniforms or practice shorts or whatever, but you're also putting some unique and interesting designs out there that maybe aren't exactly what was there, and so you're creating that kind of clothing as well. So what's the design process look like in terms of, is the school involved in that, or do they just sign off after the design's been created?
Yeah, so we have a saying within 99, what has been seen cannot be unseen. So before we ask for permission, we kind of come up with what we want to do, and then we send it, and then let them comment on it, because once they see it, it's a different conversation than if you're just trying to talk about it with them.
For sure.
Because so much of what we bring back is from years where there were no brand guidelines. Schools are so tight on that now and have, different Pantone shades, and everything is really, really a tight-knit package with these schools. But it wasn't like that in the 70s, 80s, and even in the 90s, early 90s, the mid 90s. That's been more of a 2000 on thing. So a lot of these shorts and stuff that we bring back are logos that maybe they don't use anymore. Some of their color and their Pantone shades have changed. And so you'll get a little bit of pushback on certain stuff. And some of the logos have been defunct too. So they just have thrown them out. Illinois comes to mind there with the Chief Illiniwek. that's something that they don't want out there right now. And we just had a conversation with them, and we're not going to be able to do the 89 shorts, even though we have licensing with them. And we understand that. We get that. So we have to work around that a little bit. And sometimes the colors don't match, and sometimes we have to go with a darker shade. We got called out on the Gonzaga 99s not too long ago because they're almost like a royal blue during that time, that 99 run, but we had to skew more towards the navy that Gonzaga is now because we had to adhere to brand guidelines. So that's really like the tough part is just kind of working around that. And we know that these aren't exact replicas. There are spin on them. They're as close as they can be. And we do the best that we can with what we're given, but it's worked pretty well so far.
I think it's interesting, just a little behind the curtain type thing when I come down there to see them working on stuff too, because they do have like access to these things, but then they're also doing like digging in old videos. I forget the one we were watching last time I was down there, but in the game, the players don't even have the same like matching shorts on. It looks like they've got different pairs of shorts on, and they're playing in the same game. So it's just incredible like how things have developed. It's so commoditized now that it's all uniform, but it just wasn't like that. We can remember the days in playing high school or wherever where you just hand your jersey down to the JV the next year, and they were probably doing it at the colleges too, like just pick it out of the athletic bin and here you go.
Yeah, so we got Michigan licensing to what was that, Meyer? Maybe like 2 weeks ago or something. Yeah, and we were looking at Fab 5 shorts because we wanted to do Fab 5 shorts because I get asked about those on a weekly basis by our customer and audience. So I just want to drop them and just put them up there with no caption, no comment, no nothing. Like just like here, have these, have all of these. Yeah. But we were looking at old Fab 5 pictures. In the M's on, I think it was Weber's shorts, are like halfway up his leg. And then the M's on Jalen Rose's shorts are down by the piping at the bottom. And then on Ray Jackson's, they're somewhere in the middle of those two. And we were like, what the hell is going on with these shorts?
Yeah. They want you to put out one version for each guy. That's what they want you to do.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure people would buy any and all versions of those Fab 5 shorts too. So we might have to look into that.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, thinking back to the genesis of this whole thing, what was the biggest obstacle or challenge that you faced trying to get it started?
Oh, man.
Working a full-time job.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah,
having two jobs at the same time.
My job at our school, I would go down first and second period. I had a prep period, back-to-back preps or PLC or whatever it was, and so I would run down to HQ, which was about 7 minutes away, for 45 minutes, 50 minutes, answer calls, set up conference calls if needed to be with schools, pack orders, answer customer emails, social media, email. Then I'd go back to school, teach for the full day. Then I had 45 minutes before my kids would get off the bus between when I got off school. So I'd go back down there, do that for 45 minutes, go home, get the kids off the bus. My wife would go to work then when I got home. And then when she would get home about 7:30 or 8, a lot of times I would go back down to HQ and finish off the day. So that was like a crazy, crazy hustle. And you don't realize it while you're in it because you're just doing it because you have to. And then when you're out from it, underneath it, you look back and you're like, whew. Why the hell did I do that? Like that was stressful. But yeah, I don't know. The biggest obstacle, we've had a lot, man. Working with friends is hard. Like I said, we don't have all 4 of our members still together. That's tough, and that wasn't fun to go through. Licensing was obviously tough. Getting people, building the brand is just tough. Getting people to believe in you is tough. Like all of it's tough, but like if you look back and you read about businesses or you listen to podcasts, whatever, everybody has those crossroads or those fork in the road moments multiple times. And it really was, there was never a doubt to me that we would eventually succeed. Like it would eventually get to what we had in our mind. But to do that, to get there, you have to bust your ass. That's just life in general. And I was always cautious. Like, I believe so much in the idea, but I've also seen people that believe so much in their idea that they don't know when to stop. And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind too. But you could see it building, you could see it starting to come, and you knew you just had to keep pushing through until something broke. And we were lucky enough and fortunate enough and worked hard enough, and had enough right ideas for it to break. And so, it's been super, super rewarding from that standpoint. I don't even know if I answered your question though, to be honest.
No, you did. Absolutely. Who was the first employee you brought on that was not part of that original group? Because clearly when most people start a business, just like you just described, you're doing most of it yourself. You're bootstrapping it. You're trying to figure out, hey, I'm working from 8 p.m. to midnight, or I'm working from 11 p.m. after my kids go to bed until 2 in the morning, and all those kinds of things. And I'm kind of in that same stage right now where we've got all these different podcasts and we're trying to build our network and doing these NBA team pods, and I'm editing a lot of them, and I'm looking around going, okay, well, now it might be time to try to find somebody else to start doing some of this stuff so I can focus more on actually growing the business side of it. So when did you come to that realization, and what did that look like in terms of taking it from something that you personally had a passion for to, hey, this has got to be a real business if we're actually going to succeed?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I could go a million different directions with that. But to answer the first part of it, our first hire was my best friend since we were 14. His name's Matt Bryville, and he does all our design work. So he takes everything that's inside my head and puts it onto a computer screen where people can actually produce the stuff. And so that was really awesome. And I always wanted to be responsible for putting food on families' table and having like adults rely on us for a paycheck and stuff. I've always thought there was something really cool and neat about that. And I always thought that there was also added pressure, which I kind of like that too. And so like to be able to have 5 employees now, 7 that are on our payroll is really cool. And I want to continue to do that. And I want to continue to add to that. I mean, I would love to bring Meyer, for example. I would love to bring Aaron on full time to do what you were talking about, the editing and the podcast and the YouTube stuff and all that stuff that we want to. But you have to be smart in your growth too. You can't hand out jobs just to be handing out jobs, because you have to look out for the good of the business first. And you always, as an entrepreneur, you always think that you can do most of the stuff yourself, whether you can do it or not. And it's like that penny pinching mentality of, okay, we could pay somebody $45,000 a year to do this, or we could save ourselves $45,000 to spend elsewhere, and we could patch it together just by working a little bit harder and a little bit smarter and stuff. And that's the challenge. And that's the problem solving aspect of it. That's what's really, really fun about it. It can also be what's stressful. And, to not answer your question about like, how do you know when to grow? I don't think that you do. It's something that kind of happens naturally. And we're in that now. We've kind of had some internal discussions about some of the expansion, some of our growth that we're doing, and hiring outside of our buddy system. Basically, everybody that works for us is a friend right now.
Right.
Which is freaking awesome. Like that's my favorite part of all of it. And if I could, I would keep everything in family, so to speak. But there are people out there that can take us to the next level, that have certain skill sets that we don't, that we're just going to have to find and lure over to our side to take this thing and grow it to what we think it can be and what we want it to be too. So it's just a challenge. I think it when it happens or when it has to happen, but there's no way of forecasting when that's going to be, if that makes sense.
I think you guys too are one of the things that's so driven right now is that you guys drive the culture, because all the owners are so deeply involved and are working on things on a day-to-day basis. It forms the culture of of the business right now. And it'll be one of the things I'm interested in hopefully being a part of, or just seeing, is just how you guys grow in establishing that culture for people that aren't a part of your friend group, or that are going to help the business to grow outside of the boundaries that you guys have established right now. But business growth is such an interesting, step, and it can be treacherous, but I think you guys are really taking the time to think about it and growing the right way.
Talk about your role, Aaron.
Appreciate that.
Talk about your role, Aaron.
Yeah, so the conversations became in the hallway became the blog at first, and we came up with kind of a side project. Basically, we were calling ourselves the High Volume Shooters because Josh and I like to let a few 3-pointers fly when we're playing pickup basketball. They've even got a YouTube series called Cold Threes, which Josh is the champ of right now, and so that developed into a podcast. I've loved podcasts from, I don't know for how long. I started listening to like the guys that are the starters or no dunks when I was in grad school, and I kept telling Josh, "Hey, we should do this. It's just fun. We love talking basketball. Let's put it down, and maybe this can be part of the storytelling." Because one of the things that Josh has done from the beginning is write the little blurbs that are associated with the shorts, and I love the storytelling about basketball and the culture that creates. And I just wanted to be involved in that. To be honest, was just like, okay, I love talking about basketball. How can I help you grow the brand in any way and get to talk about basketball, which is something I love to do anyways. And we just started doing it. Just like anything, we were trying to figure it out. We still have some technical difficulties from time to time.
That was last night. We had
Trust me, you guys are not alone in any way, shape, or form. We've been doing it for 2.5 years and put out 400
I know you have
episodes.
so many episodes. Yeah.
And believe me, there's still things that to this day, I look at, and my setup, to be honest, is a USB mic and a laptop. And I look at some of the people that have, a much fancier setup, and I'm like, man, should I be doing that? And then I go back to, man, there's times where we're running this and I wonder, man, is this too much?
Right.
Trying to get everybody connected. And luckily we had pretty good luck tonight. We only had one brief snafu of trying to get everybody's volume right. But yeah, it's a challenge for sure. And especially, again, it's sort of not your guys' main, obviously it's not your main part of your business. So it's something ancillary to what you're trying to do. And so it comes down to, like you guys said earlier, you're looking at how much money do you want to invest? Like I keep looking at, I like that fancy new microphone, or I should get one of the, I should get an XLR microphone that I can plug in and do the Bill Simmons and, try to get the audio before it goes into Zoom. And so there's all kinds of things that you try to learn along the way. And you get better. It's just like anything. You get better at whatever it is you do. It doesn't matter if it's podcasting or licensing or t-shirts or design. And the more you do it, the better you get at it for sure.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right. So next thing I wanted to ask you is, did you know anything about the sourcing of the t-shirts before you got into this? Like, how did you go from, hey, I got an idea, I want to create t-shirts? Where did you go to learn about the business of how do I get the actual shirts that I'm going to print on, that I'm going to use to have my designs? Because obviously there's a wide variety in terms of the quality of the product I'm sure that you could put out there. So how did you go about finding that? And did you know anything about it beforehand?
That probably Kevin Spawn, who I mentioned earlier, probably deserves the credit for that. He's the one that introduced me to soft t-shirts. And so I ran a golf scramble for all my old high school and college buddies after we got out of high school and college, called the Pound It. And so we would get like 125 of our best friends together to it was always the last weekend in July. We called it the Pound It. We'd make shirts for it. We have a party before, and then we'd play a golf scramble on Saturday and then party all Saturday night. And so what happened was we started making those t-shirts. Kevin and I started making those t-shirts, or having those t-shirts made on soft t-shirts, tri-blend t-shirts, and everybody kept asking us for more, or everybody kept telling telling us that their girlfriend stole it or their wife took it or whatever the case may be. And then we did that with the Wes Atterbury Foundation, which I'm also a board member for. Wes Atterbury is one of my best friends who died of melanoma when he was 28, and he left behind his wife and brand new baby. And so we did a golf scramble and a 3-on-3 tournament for the foundation that raised money to help tri-state families that were dealing with melanoma. And so we just took the Pound It concept and applied it to the Weekend for West golf scramble basketball tournament, and the same thing happened. So people were getting T-shirts taken. Like it was crazy. People that weren't even a part of it were calling us, asking us for T-shirts. We were printing 100, 150 extras. They were selling at the events, and they were selling out. And so it just kind of became this thing. And then, like I had mentioned earlier in the podcast, we weren't finding the collegiate license stuff that we wanted. So it was basically those two things were our test markets for our idea without really being the test markets for our idea. They came before the idea, but then they gave us the confidence with that idea. So there's multiple. And we've gone through multiple T-shirt manufacturers. Started with American Apparel. We've tried Bella Canvas, and then we switched a few times since that. Next Level is one that we've had, and so we finally got to a T-shirt that we like. But we're still trying to upgrade. Like we can always do better, and that's the way that we look at it. We can always provide more quality. We can always work with our manufacturers to continue to make these things better, because we want to put out a premium product and we want to put out the best things that we can. And even when our customers might not know about a better type of shirt or adding some features to our shorts or our practice shorts or whatever the case may be, like if we know it and we know that it's out there, then it's kind of like we see it as our duty to pursue that and try to make that work so we can give everybody the best stuff. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, it makes total sense. All right, what's your favorite product that you have on the website right now? I know they're all your babies, so it may be hard to pick something out, but what's your favorite thing that you have out there right now?
I'm gonna jump in first.
You take that, Mike.
I love the practice shorts. I am diehard for those. I just think that I miss that. I had somebody on my pickup hoops game ask me if I stole those from one of the team's lockers back in the 80s. So they just fit perfect, and they're like super comfortable. I play hoops in them too, but they're like that perfect blend of stuff where you can stick a heavy cell phone in it and your pants don't fall down, or you can jump on the court and run around and get sweaty in them too.
That's where I was going to, and maybe because it's a little bit newer, but we really wanted to develop a lifestyle short that had that throwback feel to the 70s, 80s, and then the 90s when we grew up, of the practice packs that you would get, where you would get the mesh shorts with the mesh tank jersey, and that was your practice gear. But we know that like not everybody, myself included, can pull off the St. John's Felipe Lopez shorts out in public, right? Like that's a tough wear.
Yeah, you're probably not wearing those to the grocery store too often.
Speak for yourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean you can, but I mean in Evansville, Indiana, it's going to draw some attention. But I can wear any of these mesh shorts, and we honestly, God, and you won't hear me say this ever on anything in regards to anything we've done, but I think that we have the only retro shorts, and I'm super proud of those because we've built our company off of that, and it's just such a unique idea that nobody else is doing. But I do truly believe that we have the best mesh shorts on the market today, because we took everybody that was doing it and we bought those shorts and we picked those things apart, and we took the best qualities of everything that is currently out there and we blended it into one pair. And so if I'm picking a favorite child right now, it's the whole category of practice mesh shorts.
When did you guys add those to the menu?
So we did a Midnight Madness event to launch those, which was in October, and we did it based on like the old Midnight Madness, the first night of practice, when ESPN used to go and tour around the country, and everybody stayed up till midnight, and they let the public into practices and all that stuff. We played on that nostalgia, so that was like October 24th, 25th, something like that of this year. But it was this big old thing down at HQ, and we stayed up till midnight. And as 40-year-olds, we don't do that often anymore. And so, like, we got to like hang out with our buddies. Yeah, we got to like hang out with our buddies and drink like Jolt Cola and stay up. And
nice. There you go. There you go. So, beyond the expansion of the schools that you're going to offer, what's on the horizon that you guys can talk about product wise? Is there anything that you guys are eyeing right now? Any category that you guys are looking at that you think is going to come out, let's say in the next 6 months to a year, or something that you have long term that you're like, man, we'd really get into? You're going to produce the old Indiana warm up uniform.
This is where Josh yells at me because I see behind the scenes and then they say, hey, you can't talk about
you're
that
not supposed
right
to. I gotcha. Understood. Anything you can talk about. Anything you could talk about. Let's put it that way.
I'm so guarded in all of this stuff, and I can't explain why. But I will say that we think we figured out a way to bring back the warm-ups. So college basketball, some of college basketball's best warm-ups, we think that we found a way to do that in a modern, in a unique way with our own spin on it. And those will be coming out in the next month and a half. So
those are going to be tearaway, right?
What's that?
Those are going to be tearaway, right?
No tearaways. No tearaways. They're too,
see, now that'd be a great way to go in. That'd be a great way to go into your office.
Yeah, that's right.
You just walk in, into your classroom in the morning. You're like, let's go. Rip those things right off.
Then, Meyer could have his suit on underneath there and just rip that off.
That'd be great for an assembly, man. You want to get some applause.
Yeah, that's right.
That'd be great for an assembly. You'd be rocking.
I don't know if that's kind of applause. I'd be getting more boos, I think.
That's good stuff. That is good stuff. All right. So anything else about the company wise, and then let's start talking some old time college basketball. Anything else that you guys want to share that you think is relevant or important about what you guys are doing as far as the company and plans for the future and what you guys are hoping to accomplish, or what you want to tell people out there who are listening that want to find out more about your brand?
Yeah, just 99.com. You can follow us on Instagram, obviously, at 99. We're also on Twitter. We're probably most active on Instagram, but we're active on Twitter too. If you want to keep up with the brand, we have our podcast, obviously, that I co-host with Meyer. We have our YouTube channel at 99. Any of that stuff, if you're interested, even if you don't buy our stuff, like that's one of the probably the main thing that I want to get across is, to us, it's not strictly about the money. The money is nice, and the money is what allows us to continue doing what we're doing, but it's not why we started, and it's not why we're still in it today. Like, we still really, really just like bringing out dope stuff and stuff that means something to us, or some kind of nostalgia play is way more fun to us, and seeing people like it is what it's all about. So even if you don't buy anything from us, you can stay connected to the college basketball nostalgia of it on those channels that I mentioned, and we appreciate everything.
Very cool. All right, let's get into some vintage college basketball talk. I'm going to start out the conversation by saying that when I was a kid, the one item that I would have killed for when I was 11, 12, 13. So that's at the age when Michael Jordan was at North Carolina. And my family, probably when I was maybe 10, started going to vacation at Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. So every year we would drive through the state of North Carolina to Hilton Head. And every year I would make my parents stop off the highway and go to some mall to try to find. I wanted a Michael Jordan North Carolina jersey. I loved Carolina even before Jordan, and Jordan only accentuated that love. And I went to every year I would make my parents stop, and I never, ever, ever was able to find that. Now, obviously now you could find them in lots of different places, but back then you could never find them. And that was the one item that I legitimately would have killed for probably when I was 12 years old. It's just incredible how you think about how accessible stuff is today compared to what it was like, again, 30, 40 years ago. It's just amazing.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure.
You guys got to go down to Raleigh, Durham, right, Josh?
What's that?
Were you guys down? You guys were down there, right? In Raleigh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went down there. Winston-Salem, Raleigh, Durham. We did the whole nine not too long ago. So we got to see some of those gyms and stuff. But yeah, like growing up, so I was born in 1980. So my teenage years were in the 90s. And when those East Bay magazines would come in the mail, it was like better than like, our dad's getting Playboys or something. Like that's what it was like the equivalent to.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
So we would take those into school and just dissect them and take highlighted. I remember Mom would let me circle like 3 things for Christmas or something that I would want out of there. And I would, that was like some real brain crunching going on there, trying to figure out what I wanted out of those things.
I think Slam Magazine, right? I mean, for me, you too.
Slam was great.
Slam Magazine like changed my life. Like basketball was just
for sure
whatever was right in front of me, maybe Michael Jordan. And when that first came out, I mean, it's weird to say that a magazine could do that, but the perspective that it took, it just opened up a world of basketball that I did not have access to in a small town in Indiana, and was definitely fundamental to just my understanding of the game.
No question about that. No question about that.
For sure. Yeah, got us out of our bubble. That was pre-internet, so Slam was legit.
Yeah, you couldn't find anything. I mean, if you wanted to, I don't think anybody who's growing up today, again, has no idea what it was like trying to find anything in terms of products like what you guys are putting out there. This stuff just didn't exist. There was just no way for you to access it. And like I said, I went to the state of North Carolina to try to find that stuff, and still didn't. Still couldn't find it. I mean, still couldn't find it. And it's probably one of those things that when you look back on your childhood, I'm like, man, I would have worn that. I would have worn the heck out of that thing. So I had to settle for the original Michael Jordan warm up, the Air Jordan black and red warm up suit with the the whole thing back in the mid 80s, black and red, the full on, like satiny.
Still got it?
That was. I do not still have it. What's funny is we had the 5-star guys on. Probably, I'm trying to think how long it's been. It's probably been within.
It was last. Yeah, I listened to that. That was good. The last year. I was going to ask you. Did you find your 5-star shirt?
I did. In fact, what I will do is I took some photos and I put those, actually, I think I put them on our Twitter, but I will send them to you guys. So I had the original, I had the orange, the orange camp shirt.
Legit.
And then I also have the white All-Star Classic shirt as well. So
nice.
Got both of those, and they're both still in my possession. So those are two things that I still have. So
who'd you have on from 5-star? Carl and PRC? Or
yep, exactly. Else? Yep, yeah, both of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Love
yeah,
so
they were great, and it's one of those things that there's so much history of the game tied up in 5-star. And we talked to them about just the way that the summer basketball has changed, and the way, unfortunately, 5-star sort of became obsolete as the rules changed and everything else. But you think about, I'm very nostalgic for that era of basketball because I'm partial to it because I grew up in that environment. But, you just think about those kids at that time, some of the best players in the country. In fact, all of the best players in the country are there at whichever one of the locations you want to talk about. But when I went to Robert Morris, and you're out on the tennis courts in the 95-degree heat. You're trudging up and down the hills to get to the dorms. You're eating the bad dorm food at Robert Morris, and some of the best players in the country are serving everybody else and serving as bus boys so they can get there free. And it was just an incredible environment when you think about the difference between that and what guys do when they're playing on the EYBL circuit or they're flying all across the country on the shoe company's dime. And again, there's nothing wrong with what's going on today in terms of that, but it's just totally different. And I don't think anybody, if you really talk to a 17-year-old kid today who's one of the top 100 high school players in the country, and you explain to them what it was like during that 5-star era, they just wouldn't have the ability to even comprehend what that was like compared to what it's like today. It's just a totally different world.
I think I really do think, though, that the pendulum swinging back a little bit. I know I hear you guys talking about coaching, and there's so many Instagram guys now too that are really like honing in on fundamentals and drills. And I think that as these guys are getting like injuries from the amount of basketball that they're playing in these games, I think they're starting to realize like that you can get maybe more bang for your buck by taking the time to learn the fundamentals and work on skills as much as you do like just putting miles on your treads. If you're playing the long game with some of these top level recruits.
I do think that's true. Like we just had Munch Williams from the PSA Cardinals in New York, and Munch came on and he was talking to me about, he's like, look, we play over the course of the summer. We believe in quality over quantity. Yeah. He's like, we might play over the course of the year, we might play 28 games, versus these teams that sometimes play, 80 to 100 games. And like you said, it's just, when you're playing that many games, one, you never have an opportunity to work on your game. And don't get me wrong, I think one of the things that kids miss out on today because pickup basketball and outdoor basketball is gone. And so I think about the amount of times that I just went to the playground and played for 3 straight hours. And I don't think kids today do that. So I think from a basketball IQ standpoint, I think you learn things by playing the game that you don't learn by just training with a trainer or just being in the gym by yourself. But conversely, I think that it's different playing in a pickup game versus playing in an AAU game where there's a coach, where your parents are in the stands, where there's potentially college coaches there watching you if you're a high school player, where they're keeping score. I just don't think you can be as creative. I don't think you learn to do things that are outside your comfort zone in the same way you do when you're a 15-year-old kid playing on a playground with guys who play in college and guys who are adults who maybe even they're not really great basketball players, but if you're 16 and you're playing against a 29-year-old man, you better learn how to do some things with your body and to be able to get shots off against people that are bigger and stronger than you that I just think kids today don't learn in that same way. And I do agree that I think people are starting to realize that the mileage you put on people, that you put on kids, is going to have a negative effect as you go forward. But I still think that the lack of pickup basketball, I still think hurts the game in a lot of ways, but it's not coming back because of the way we parent and because of just society. And I just don't see a case where a kid like me who was 13, 14 years old and I'd ride a half mile up to the playground and be playing with people from all over the city of Cleveland that would come and play at the park where I played. That's just never coming back. You're just not getting kids to do that anymore.
So my wife always gets pissed at me because I always tell her that I'll probably die before her because she's 5 years younger than me. I'm like, look, listen, take my ashes to Gulfmore Park and spread them. And she was like, why? And I was like, because those were the best days of my life, playing pickup basketball at Gulfmore Park. I was like, at least just take half of them. You can bury the other half with you wherever you lay. But put half of my ashes at Gulfmore Park because, like you said, those were just like fun. It was literally same case scenarios you said. Half a mile from my house, I would go up there from the time I was in 8th grade through the time, even through college, and I would play against grown men, and it helped my game so much because, like you said, you have to figure out something. You have to figure out how you're going to contribute in a game that you can't physically dominate. And, and just some of that experience in figuring that out. And then those guys that we would play against that were older than us would come to our high school games and support us. And they felt like they were invested in
for sure
our growth and our maturity and that. Now, they would pick at you and you could end up in a fight and some awkward situations while you were there because it was competition. But at the end of the day, those guys were there and they felt like they felt a responsibility to try to make us better. So we were better for our community, which we were all a part of in high school. Like it was just like a dope just like time in my life, man. I loved it and I miss it. On the flip side of that, I played pickup basketball today down here in Florida.
Nice.
And I took my two nephews, 16-year-old and 11-year-old nephew, and got in a 3-on-3 pickup game, and we destroyed these three dudes. But now I can barely sit down in this chair that I'm talking to you guys in.
Barnett, did you go shirts and skins?
No,
shirts and skins. Shirts and skins is gone.
Super embarrassed to take my shirt off.
So I'll give you a good shirts and skins story.
Yes.
So I've had a basketball camp now for elementary school kids. I started it not the summer after I graduated, but the following summer. So this would be in the summer of, I believe, 1993. And then this summer, I think, will be 28 years,
awesome.
29 years, something like that. But when I first started, we would have camp. And so usually we would play 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 half-court games, depending on how many kids we had at the camp. And so you'd announce the games, and then the kids would go to their basket, and one of the teams would be shirts, and one of the teams would be skins. And in the first probably 15 to 18 years of the camp, kids would literally be fighting about who got to be skins. Like they would run to the basket, and we were in a gym that didn't have air conditioning, so it was hot.
That's part of it.
And so they'd run to the court, and they would immediately start arguing about who was going to be skins. And then sometime around that, whatever, year 15 to 18, I can't remember exactly when, I'd say, okay, this team go over here, this team go over there. And suddenly those fights were gone, and I'd start having to assign. I'm like, all right, your team is skins. And eventually it would get where the kids would just look at me. They're like, I'm not taking off my shirt. Yeah. And I would look at them and go, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I couldn't even wrap my head around the fact that why wouldn't you want to go skins? Like, kids used to fight to go skins. And now you go into any gym and you see kids playing pickup basketball, and you never see shirts and skins anymore. You never see it. It's completely
unless you
gone.
go to Jasper, Indiana, and watch Meyer.
It's still there.
Oh yeah, tonight
in his weekly pickup game.
Still shirts and skins.
That's
40-year-old men. It's not a pretty sight. Thank God there's no cameras allowed.
Hey, but that's all right. That's more retro than anything.
No doubt.
That's more retro than anything you guys can produce.
I got one for you, which I love, is like pulling on the threads of basketball. So you talked about 5-star. So from that, we had the guy who wrote a lot of the 5-star magazine for Slam, Alejandro Danois, Ali, on with us when we talked to them, and he wrote the Baltimore boys. Did the Baltimore boys doc, and did the Boys of Baltimore, Dunbar boys. Yep. And they talked about in there a story where the guys they only had one set of jerseys. So at the rec centers where they played during the summers, they only had one set of jerseys, and they would fight to get in the first game, because otherwise you just get handed the jersey from the game before to wear in the next game. So they definitely would have rather go shirts and skins.
Okay, let's put it this way. That would not fly anywhere at this point. At this point, you would have
pandemic that is not happening,
and not even because of the kids. Can you imagine the parental reaction to that? Yeah. I mean, that would get ugly real fast. Yeah, the playground basketball world, the pickup basketball world, is one that, I mean, I've lamented it numerous times on the podcast, and I think, Josh, you said it best, that some of your best moments. I mean, I played Division I college basketball, and I can honestly say that some of my best moments that I remember as a basketball player, in terms of just the feeling that basketball gave me, some of those best moments were just playing pickup basketball. It was not during organized games. I mean, I just love the camaraderie and the spirit. And like you said, I had guys that were 28, 29 when I'm 15, 16 that kind of took me under their wing, and we actually became friends. There's a 10, 12 year age group. And as you said, like, they'd come to high school games and they'd be invested in what I did, and they wanted to know where I was going to go to college, and they followed you through your college career, and they'd, call you up on the phone, and you'd see them in the summertime, and they felt like they had a hand in my development. And I think kids today, it's just not like that. It's almost like it's kind of like the NBA in a sense that everybody is kind of their own brand. It's obviously at a much smaller scale at a high school, but everybody just kind of thinks about how it's going to impact them. And you think about even just the way parents are and the way kids are and the amount of, like I knew who my high school teammates were going to be when I was in second grade. I mean, I knew who those kids were going to be. It was kind of the same group all the way coming through. And now it's like you don't even know year to year in a high school team who's going to be back the next year. Like this kid played as a ninth grader, but he's not happy, so he's going to transfer here and all that. And so you got a lot of that goes on. It's just different. It's different than it was.
It is different era. Yep.
For sure. And I'm glad I grew up in the era that I did. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that part of what we love though too is bringing back those stories, because as a history teacher, and Josh taught history too, I think that part of it is that things are cyclical too. I don't know, it won't come back in the same incarnation that we experience, but things do have a tendency to change and morph over time. And what we're talking about is things that kids still need. I mean, they love, I can tell you, just when I go, we got recess at our middle school. And if I go out there and start shooting with them, it takes like 2 seconds before they want to chop it up and challenge me and play me one-on-one. And you can see them light up. So they love the camaraderie with each other. They'll be behind the building playing, so it still exists. It's just, I think we've got to find a way to make it, make them realize that it's, that it's okay, and that there's an importance in that as well. Not just looking up at the score, the scoreboard, or having an announcer at the game, but just playing, getting out and playing basketball and chopping it up with your friends.
I agree 100%. All right, shifting gears. Give me your favorite college team of all time, each of you.
I'm gonna go first, Meyer, because I've been trying. I wanted to get this off my chest because I'm sitting down here by the pool on vacation, and I'm watching the Tennessee-Missouri game right now. And I guess Donnie Walsh retired, or something happened with Donnie Walsh, and the first thing underneath his thing was drafted Reggie Miller in 1987 over Indiana's Steve Alford. Why did they have to put Steve Alford?
Why
did they couldn't it just said drafted Reggie Miller in 1987 and it got the same exact effect? So my favorite team of all time, favorite player of all time, 1987 Indiana Hoosiers, Steve Alford. He was my guy. He's still my guy. He will always be my guy. That will always be my team. And then I'll pass it to Meyer.
Yeah, I'm more of a agnostic than Josh, because I traveled around. My dad's a pastor, so we were all over the place. I loved actually that 96, 97 Kentucky team, which is blasphemy to me now because I ended up going to IU. But I would say I've been watching a bunch of retro games this year, and I think those Georgetown teams are my current favorite. So it's subject to change for me because I'm always watching games and just studying games. But I love the intensity, the defense that they played with, and I love watching big guys right now. The game, when I'm watching NBA basketball, the game's so much about fluidity and 3-point shooting. But I love just watching the opportunity to watch a couple of big guys just pound inside and just the difference in the way that the game was played.
Yeah, it's played completely different today. I think that's one of the things that, again, as an old man, get off my lawn speech, that I still have difficulty sometimes wrapping my head around, is just how much the three and the emphasis on the three has changed the game. When you see a 3-on-1 and guys don't even break for the basket, they just fan out to the three-point line. It's just wild. That to me is still incredible. And I've said this before too, that, I played a lot of basketball in my life, and I don't think ever in my career, maybe once or twice, did I drive into the basket and then turn around and throw the ball backwards behind me 20 feet back outside the three-point line. Maybe you drove in and passed it to the corner, maybe, but I don't ever remember driving in and then turning and doing a 180 and passing the ball back out to the top of the key. It just didn't exist. And now, the best passers in the game, that pass is clearly something that you have to have in your bag, is to be able to get in there and then create opportunities for other people to score. So it really is amazing. So I got a question for each of you based on.
Hold on.
Sure,
Mike,
yeah, go.
Who's your favorite team?
Yeah.
Okay, so my team was my favorite team is definitely 83 Carolina.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, or 81. The Jordan, the Jordan freshman team, when you have Sam Perkins and you have James Worthy and you have Matt Doherty and you have Jimmy Black and that whole group. I think that was, like I said, I liked Carolina before. Before that, I rooted for them the season prior when Isaiah beat them in the when Reagan got shot right before the game. So I remember that game vividly. That's probably
Isaiah.
that's probably the first championship game that I have real memories of. So for whatever reason, I like Carolina, and then Jordan just cemented it for me because he was just so, again, magnetizing even at that early time in his career. It just, and then the shot obviously just, topped it all off. So Carolina was always my team, has always been my team. And probably during the 1980s, I probably followed them as closely as, today I tend to follow more NBA basketball, Aaron, than like I told you, we talked beforehand, just because college basketball, I think just by the nature of the way the system is set up, isn't quite as compelling as it used to be. But yet, I think back to that time, and for sure, Carolina was my team, and that team was definitely my favorite. So here's my two questions for you guys. So when it comes to Indiana, when you think about Bobby Knight, Josh, and you think about his legacy in the game, and obviously unbelievably successful on the floor, unbelievably successful off the floor in a lot of ways when you think about the number of guys that went through the program for 4 years and graduated, and people that still, played for him, that revere him. And yet you had this whole other side. Like if you go back, I don't know when the last time you read Season on the Brink is, but if you go back and you read that book now, like when I first read it, which I can't remember when it came out for the first time, but the first time I read it and I'm going through and reading it, I'm like, okay, I mean, this is a little bit harsh, but I can see this. And now you read that and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that was ever something that somebody could. Getting away with it is the wrong way to say it, because at that time it was much more of a normal way to coach. But you look at that now and you just wonder about the legacy of Bob Knight. So when you think about Bob Knight, what's your thought process about where he was as a coach? Do you just kind of put him in an era of, hey, that's the era that he coached in and he was super successful within the confines of what he was? Or do you look at him differently now through the lens of today?
Yeah, I don't look at him differently at all. I grew up in Indiana in the Bob Knight era, so every coach that I had growing up was just trying to be Bob Knight. To me, that was just how people coached. Now, obviously, Coach Knight did some things that were I didn't have coaches that were doing some of the things that he did to a T, but it was always hard-nosed. It was always motion offense. It was always screen here, like you do this, right? We do this. There was yelling. There was punching to the clipboards. There was challenging manhood. Like that was just what it was here. Now, I do think, and I hate this for Coach Knight because the man is a basketball genius, point blank, period. Genius. And I think that history will not remember him kindly because of the off the court stuff and some of the things and just the way society has changed. But he won 3 national championships, most wins when he hung it up and left. He was at the top. His protege is Mike Krzyzewski. Not a bad name to have on your list under your coaching tree. And I just think that
you could throw 5-star in there too. His influence,
for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean,
yep.
So Bob Knight created the freaking stations. Like he was the one that went into 5 stars. Like we're gonna run stations. At this station, you're gonna do this. This station. What basketball camp have you guys ever gone to or put on or worked at where there weren't stations? He did that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He did that. Like this guy was unbelievable. And history won't remember him nearly what he was. We'll elevate someone like Dean Smith for good reason. But Bob Knight and Dean Smith will just be revered forever because he was polite about it and good. Same thing with Wooden. But at the end of the day, Coach Knight is in that conversation as one of the greatest of all time, and he'll get left out of that conversation a little bit just because of society, my opinion.
No, I think you're right, and I think he's a product of the era that he grew up in and that he coached in. And clearly during that era, as you said, there were so many coaches that emulated his style, and there were so many coaches that wanted to coach the same way that he did. And I do think that now retrospectively, when you look back at it, that there's a lot of people that say, hey, how could this guy have gotten away with saying this or treating coaches, treating kids this way or doing whatever. And yet I often think, like, if you have conversations with people who didn't play, whether it's, high level high school athletics or college, I have conversations with people all the time. And I say, when I try to relate some of the stories of things that went on or that we did or that we would have to do, and sometimes people will just kind of nod their head at you, but they don't really understand kind of what that hard-nosed coaching was like or what some of the physical demands that were placed on you. Because during the era that I played, and same thing with Bob Knight when he's coaching, like there was no like, hey, we need to give these guys there's no load management back in that time. It was like, hey, we're practicing for 3.5 hours. I don't care if there's a game tomorrow. That's what we need to do. Or we're going to run X number of suicides because I'm pissed that you guys didn't do what you were supposed to do, and all those kinds of things. And it was just the way it was. And as a player, you just did it because that's what you did. And so go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So one of the highlights of my life and obviously of 99 career was we got to actually go down to Lubbock and visit Coach Knight about, I think it was 3 summers ago now. And so they invited us down. We got to go to their house and just spend time with him and Karen, who is a saint. His wife is a saint. She's a great lady. And listen to him tell stories for about 6 hours one day and about 4 hours the next day. So it was awesome. But since you're a Jordan fan, I'll share one story that he told us that I thought was hilarious. He said it was the 84 gold medal game, and there was about 4 minutes to go in the game. I never did fact check this, by the way. So if this is off, this is straight from the horse's mouth. This is straight from Coach Knight's mouth. And they're winning. They're winning big. They're up huge. And so he didn't name Jordan a captain of that team. I don't know who the captains were, but Jordan was not one of them. But only the captains could take timeout. So only Coach Knight or the captains on the floor could call timeout. Nobody else was allowed. So there's about 4 minutes left in the game, and Jordan calls timeout. And so Coach Knight's telling us this, and he's sitting there, and he's like, so I'm just staring at him on the sideline, and I'm thinking, like, what the hell's he doing? Why is he calling timeout? And he says, so Jordan and the whole team comes over, and he's just asking, like, Mike, the hell are you doing? Why are you calling timeout? He said, Coach, look at the scoreboard. He said, Michael, I know what the score is. He was like, good. I just wanted to let you know we're 4 minutes ahead of schedule. I've never heard that before. I've never heard of anybody like being up in a game and equating that to being ahead of schedule. Like, I just thought it was so clever. And Coach Knight obviously loved it. He cracked up telling us the story. It was hilarious. Cool.
I remember the story from the 84 Olympics with Knight and Jordan that I remember is just there's a video interview of Knight talking about how, just this guy is unbelievable and that he has a chance to be the best player in the history of basketball. And you're talking about that's before he ever sets foot on an NBA floor. And so when you talk about the brilliance of a coach and being able to recognize the special, and again, not that recognizing that Michael Jordan was going to be great was probably, Bob Knight was probably not alone in that assessment, but to say that he's going to be the greatest player, he has an opportunity to be the greatest player ever, that's stepping out on a pretty thin branch when you're talking about a kid who is, just coming off their junior year of college and is going to be on their way to the NBA. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
What was the thing that ESPN did, like Basketball, A Love Story, or The Story of Basketball, or whatever?
Yep.
It was like a 30-part series or whatever, but
that was based on that book. Yeah, based on the book.
Yeah, so Billy Packer is in there, and he's talking about the 84 Olympics, and he says he talks to Bob Knight, and Bob Knight's like, can't have Jordan as my two guard. He can't shoot. So he says, okay. He's like, give it a couple practices, Bobby. And so goes back after a couple practices. He's like, okay, listen, the dude still can't shoot. He was like, but I want that dude in the foxhole with me if we're going to war.
Yeah.
And then he said, he goes, so I left Bloomington. A few weeks later, I come back for the games or whatever. He looked at me, he goes, that's going to be the greatest fucking basketball player that ever played the game. So it took him like all of 3 weeks to get to.
Yeah, there you go.
Like, you can't shoot to greatest of all time.
Yeah, you say that he should have known, but he doesn't go in the first pick in the draft. And
right, exactly.
I grew up playing pickup hoops with Dave Kreider, who ran the rankings for high school players, and he didn't even have him in his top 400 players going into Carolina. So they were actually mad that he ended up at 5-star because that he ended up on recruiting lists.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I think, back then it was, I'm sure, far more difficult to be able to, how do you get around the country to see all these guys, and you're not trying to, if you are watching any video, you're watching really bad VHS tapes and grainy and trying to rewind it and see. That had to be a disaster trying to be able to rank kids across the country. I mean, you're basically just, throwing it's a crapshoot at that point. So I got one more Bob Knight story for you. It's not really a Bob Knight story, but it's a funny college basketball story. So when I was at Kent State, I'm pretty sure it was my junior year, we went to Assembly Hall to play against Indiana. And so went there, and the first thing I noticed when we got in there to practice the night before, Knight was actually, I think Indiana was practicing right before they were finishing up, before we came in to do like our, day before the game practice. And the first thing I was struck by was how big Bob Knight was compared to what he looks like on TV. I mean, he is a huge guy, and he doesn't always come across that way on TV. You don't always get that sense of him. So that was the first thing that I noticed. And the second thing was that all the chairs were bolted down. So they had them all. So they had like little hooks in the floor, and then they were all roped together. All roped together with wire. And so then the next night we're playing in the game, and this was early in the season. And if you guys remember Lawrence Funderburk?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
So Funderburk was from
State eventually.
Yeah, right. He was from Columbus, but he originally signed to go to Indiana. And then after I'm pretty sure it was right after, it might have even been in the middle of that freshman year, he left Indiana and went back to Ohio State.
Knight,
but he was
Knight
still
kicked him out of practice, and then Knight went in to talk to him after practice, and Funderburk had already packed the shit and was gone. That's the story anyway.
So, which I'm sure is true. But Funderburk was still on Indiana when we played him. So it was early. This was probably, an early non-conference game. I think it was probably in December. And so we're in the middle of this game. We're playing. And at some point during the first half, there's a timeout. And as the timeout is called, we're walking, and my bench is kind of opposite where I'm the side of the court that I'm on, and Funderburk's walking the other way. So we're kind of like crossing paths. And as I'm walking back and I'm walking toward the bench, he comes up to me and he like grabs my face and like squeezes, kind of like he's, I don't know, like if you imagine you had a beard and he's like squeezing, he's like squeezing the hair on your beard. And I'm just like, and I turn and I'm
so
like,
weird.
Yeah, I turn and I'm looking at him I'm like, what the hell's he doing? I couldn't figure it out. And then it happened again, second time. And finally I'm like, dude, and then he just kind of stared at me. And then after the game, one of my teammates is like, yeah, we get done, get out of the shower or whatever. And my teammate comes up to me, he's like, hey man, you got a bunch of fuzz from a towel in your beard. And so I finally figured it out, like after the fact, that he was pulling fuzz off of my stubble as we were going back and crossing. It was one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me on the basketball floor. I'm like, why? Like, to do it once was weird, but to do it a second time. So that's my Lawrence Funderburk. That's my Lawrence Funderburk, Indiana
Lawrence
University
Funderburk
story.
was not a small individual either.
No.
That dude was massive.
He was about 6'9", lefty. He was probably, and he was probably, coming out of high school, I'm pretty sure he was a top 10, he was a top 10 player.
He's on that Jim Jackson team, right?
Yep.
He was really good at Ohio State too for some good teams.
Yeah. Never really panned out as a pro. I know he was with Sacramento for a little bit, but he didn't stick for very long. I have no idea what eventually ended up happening to him. But that leads me to another question that I wanted to ask you guys about is, who is your favorite, and maybe it's Funderburk, but who's your favorite player as a college player that had just an unbelievable college career, but that never really panned out, either never made it to the NBA or had a career that wasn't nearly as good as what people thought they were going to have as an NBA player? And then I'll give you the guy that I really liked after you guys share yours.
Mario, you can go ahead.
I don't have one off the top of my head, but I'll tell you a story about a recent one that I was looking into. There's a guy, in the 84 championship team, Michael Graham. And he is like
Georgetown,
just dunking all over. And you think, again, like it's just the all upperclassmen back in the 80s, but he's a freshman along with Reggie Williams, who's also a freshman on that team. And they're the two leading scorers in the game for Georgetown. And he's got a shaved head, looks like a modern athlete, and he just disappears after that. I was like, immediately after watching that game, I got to find out where did this guy go? Why was he not back at Georgetown? And, it was one of those kind of sad stories, but it has a happy ending. So he leaves Georgetown, ends up not at any school, never makes it, has a cup of coffee, I think, in a CBA team with Phil Jackson, actually, who ends up kicking him off the team. But he disappears for a long time. And then in 2013, I think, won the lottery in DC. So he owns a barbecue joint and he's got his own podcast now. So
nice. Oh, that's cool.
Happy ending. I love those guys who you see in college and you're like, how is this guy not going to succeed? And then somehow it just doesn't work. There's just so many things, just like in all parts of life, that have to go right for you to succeed at the NBA level.
That guy was ferocious.
I was doing a podcast earlier today. I had my dad and my brother-in-law, since we're on family vacation, join me for a podcast to talk about old teams. And the name Michael Kidd Gilchrist got pulled up. I know he's recent. And, I mean, that kid was a stud at Kentucky. Now, Anthony Davis is a generational talent, probably. But Kidd Gilchrist was like almost averaging a triple-double on that really good Kentucky team. And like we'd kind of forgotten about him until we started talking about that 2012 Kentucky team. So he's one. But I always like those guys that are like college basketball, like stars. They came at the right time in the right teams. Your Khalid El-Amins for UConn. Corey Beck for Arkansas.
Scotty Thurman for that.
Scotty Thurman, the long shorts.
Miles Simon for Arizona, and these guys get like a cup of coffee in the league, and it doesn't pan out. But it almost, to me, and this could be like ass backwards, but to me, it almost makes them more revered because the only group that hangs on to those guys is that college group and those fans of that team and that era for them. And they're not associated with anybody else. And it's like, Miles Simon is beloved in Arizona. Corey Beck is loved in Arkansas. And everybody still appreciates what they did for their team, regardless of what happened to them in the pros. And I think that's what's really neat about the college game, too.
Yeah, that is very cool. No question about that. I think when you talk Kidd Gilchrist, I think you're talking about a guy who, had he come along 20 years earlier, probably would have had a much different NBA career. But because of his inability to shoot the ball, it just makes him very, very difficult to have him out on the floor when you have a guy who's a complete liability and can't score. And yet, if you went back and you put him in, you put him on the 85 Celtics and you just have him playing defense and you have him doing all the other things that he's capable of doing out on the floor, the shooting isn't nearly as much of a hindrance to his career as it is today. I mean, today, pretty much, no matter what position you play, you better be unbelievably elite at everything you do if you can't shoot. And even then, there's a limit. There's a limit to what your role is going to be if you can't shoot the ball.
As a coach, how does his jump shot get through? I mean, I have no idea how he's allowed.
I think he's just so good. I think he's just so good.
Yeah,
you're just so good physically, and you can do so many things that you just. Whether it's coaching, whether it's him, whether it's, hey, I don't need to develop this because look at what I can do. And come on, I mean, he ended up being the second pick of the draft. Yeah. So it's hard to argue with him and say, hey, you needed to do this. It's really, he didn't need to do that until he got to the highest level. And by that point, I mean, how many thousands or millions of shots has he taken at that point where to try to fix that? And I know some guys have had their jumper fixed in the NBA. Kawhi obviously being the number one guy that changed his mechanics, was able to change his shot. But I think people underestimate how difficult that is to change your shot. I mean, you got to commit to that and commit to it at a very slow pace, and then slowly work your way back up to where you can shoot that new shot full speed. I don't think people have any idea of how long that process takes to really change your shot.
Ask Ben Simmons about that right now.
Yeah, exactly. No doubt about that.
That's true. You
No
could
doubt
just be
about that.
born in Indiana. Then
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, there you go. Right. Just put it in the water, right? Just put it in the water. It takes care of everything
we had
you
a
need.
time and place where we were growing pretty good shooters around
Yeah,
here.
no question about that.
If you watch our college team right now, you would dispute that.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Well, my favorite guy who never really had a great pro career, that was a great college player, was Walter Berry.
Oh man,
And-
that's a great one.
Yeah, St. John.
I love Walter Berry. I love Chris Mullin. So you had two lefties, and Berry was one of those guys that he reminded me. He reminded me a lot of Wayman Tisdale, and Tisdale obviously had a good pro career and passed away a few years ago, but they were very similar players and lefties that played on the block, probably kind of undersized maybe as power forwards. But Walter Berry, I just remember him catching the ball in the low block and having all those weird lefty angles where he'd just turn and pivot and shoot. And one time he'd shoot the ball from right above his head, and then the next time he'd shoot it'd be way out to his left, and guys could never figure him out. And it was just one of those things where I don't think I ever saw him use his right hand once as a college player, at least not that I can remember. But he was just a guy who was dominant in the low post as a college player, and then it just never translated to the NBA. And as you said, there's some guys that their game is built for college, and for whatever reason it just doesn't end up translating to the NBA. But it doesn't take away from what they were able to do in college. Pearl Washington's another guy that obviously had a pro career, but you think about the hype and how good he was at Syracuse and how fun he was to watch, and his personality and just everything about him as a college player was just, he was just an incredible college player, and it just never took off to the same degree that, it did when he was in college. And he's a guy who, too, you wonder, like, I look at his body and you wonder what kind of shape he was in as a pro, and if he came around today, would he take advantage of some of the things that we know about keeping guys' bodies in shape and nutrition and all the stuff that back in the 80s when he was playing, nobody had any idea about any of that stuff. I'm sure they were just like me in college, eating at Ponderosa and drinking 2 liters of soda and everything else that I was doing. You look back and you're like, man, if I would have known some of the stuff that we know now, what might have been different for me. But it's just interesting.
No doubt.
One other guy that sticks out for me in that same era, when you think about guys that could have been, that could have been great pros, or that, you wonder about their careers, Kenny Anderson. And Kenny Anderson was just, as a college player, he seemed like just that he was completely can't miss. And I think he had a 14-year career in the NBA, so it's hard to say that he didn't have great success, but he never lived up to what people thought he was going to be when he was coming out of Georgia Tech. I think people thought that he was going to be a superstar in the NBA and never quite got to that level.
You could talk about one of his teammates too. Derek Coleman would be right in there too, right?
For sure, absolutely.
Multiple tools, no reason not to be. But I just think I think that's what, it's so difficult. Life is like this, right? So much goes down to luck or injuries or just the team that you're on and who's going to develop you. I mean, you could say Chris Webber was a disappointment in some ways,
sure.
He was on one of the most memorable college teams of all time and multiple time All-NBA and All-Star. It's just hard when your ceiling is so high, like some of these guys.
For sure.
That plays into it too, I think.
Yeah, no question.
That's what makes LeBron so phenomenal.
No matter
where you stand.
Yeah.
No matter where you stand on LeBron, and I'm not a big LeBron guy by any means, Meyer can tell you that, but you have to show that man respect for all that hype that he had, and he actually lived up to it. And probably, he did. He surpassed the hype. He did, no question. How is that even possible when people have touted him as the chosen one since he was 14 years old? That's insanely hard to do. We've seen, how many people have we seen get deemed that and just fail or fall apart or not live up to the expectations? Like you were talking about Kenny Anderson, and Kenny Anderson, like you said, had a 13-year career and made millions of dollars and stuff. Like, he made it, and then we still say, like, well, potentially didn't live up to the hype. Like, that's just because probably the hype was too much. It was too much hype, you know?
I agree. I tell people all the time that I think that when you think about LeBron, and obviously his basketball career is just incredible, but to me, what's even more incredible is for a kid who was in the spotlight again at age 14 as a high school freshman, to be able to go through his entire career and to be able to deal with the media, to be able to deal with the pressure, to be able to deal with the hangers on and the people that wanted a piece of him. And you look at his career, and what's the worst thing that he's done or that has happened to him? The decision. I mean, that's when people talk about things that, oh, he really screwed that up. And so if that's the worst thing that he's done, and he's a kid who, it's not like he came from this storied background where he had all kinds of people teaching him how to deal with the media and teaching him what he should be doing with his branding. I mean, his whole entire team is his high school buddies, and he grew up with a single mom and moving around and different people in his life. And so he didn't come from a privileged background where he had people working with him on, hey, this is how you handle the media spotlight and the media attention. It's just something that, I don't want to say he's born with it, but he just has an innate ability to handle all those things in such a way that a normal human being doesn't have. And I think that's what has allowed him to be able to have that success on the floor too, is because he's been able to handle all that stuff off the floor. And I think that, you know, you can take that for granted if you want to, but when you think about some of these guys that maybe didn't live up to their success, you know, you wonder what was it about them that didn't allow them to live up to that success? Was it stuff off the court? Was it pressure? Was it having all that money? All those things LeBron had to deal with, and he was just able to set those things aside and be singularly focused. And it's just incredible that, again, as you said, Josh, that he lived up to the incredible amount of hype that he had, and he's been dealing with it. Now you're looking at 22 years from the time he's 14 years old. I mean, that's just, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And the money, I think that's the craziest part to me, is to me making it and living up to the hype is signing that second big contract and setting your life or setting your family up for generational wealth. At that point, what is my motivation? You have to really want to be great to train like he does
for sure
every year, to stay in shape, to not rest on your past success, to not rest on all the money that you made in everybody's lives that you've changed forever. That's what separates good and all-stars from Hall of Fame great. And like for Russell Westbrook, for all his faults and all the hate that he gets, give me that dude that plays hard for 82 games and acts like he's pissed off at everybody in the entire world for 82. Like, how does he get that juiced up to go and play and compete? Like, I love that about those guys. Regardless of how I feel about their games, I can respect that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that you look at the guys that have, I mean, every guy in the NBA has unbelievable physical tools. And obviously there are some guys that have slightly better tools than others, but everybody, to get to that level, you have to be incredibly gifted. And I think, as you said, when you get to what separates guys who are top 5 from the next 10 and then those 10 from the 10 after that, it's just this degree of mental toughness of every day I know I got to put the work in. Every day my team counts on me to be at my best. And there's very, very few people who can bring that kind of energy and intensity to what they do. And forget about being basketball. I mean, just think about yourself in your regular life. I mean, are you really every single day, are you ready to go in 100%? Given your, unbelievably your best every single day, how hard that is to be able to do it. And you're talking about, not only do you have the mental side of it, but you have just the physical side. And, there's always the stories of LeBron spends $1 million a year on his body, and you see some of the workouts and things that he's doing and the innovations, and he's balancing on a ball and throwing water bottles at, his trainer and all these different things that, that's what it takes. I mean, that's what it takes to be on top. And I think if there's a message that you could get across to kids who are playing the game is, look, success success doesn't come easy. And that's one of the things that I always try to get across to my kids and they're playing whatever sport it is that they're playing. It's like, look, you can talk about wanting to be good all you want, but it doesn't just happen because you talk about it. It only happens because you want it bad enough to go and work at it. And I think that's the lesson that people should take away from LeBron. It's like, look, he probably could have coasted from the time he was 14 and still been a multi-time NBA All-Star just because of the physical tools that he was given, but he took it and he maximized. And that's what I love about Jordan too, is you can say what a great athlete he was, and he was probably, in his era, probably the greatest athlete and maybe the greatest athlete ever, but he maximized every single ounce of talent that he had. And there's a lot of guys with lesser talent that didn't maximize what they had. And that's what I respect about LeBron. That's what I respect about Jordan more than anything.
I think that there's also the balance that they find, because with that intensity and focus, they seem to have fun with the game too.
Right.
Maybe it's Westbrook with his like clothes or whatever. I heard this story about Raleigh Massimino from Brian Harrington, one of the guys that we interviewed. He was a bench player. He tells this story about Massimino coming in at halftime, and he goes to the guys, you're not having fun out there. I'd rather be eating a big plate of clam pasta than watching you guys play basketball. And that like levity that he brought to that moment, mixed in with the camaraderie that they had, turns the game around, because there is like an aspect of that focus and intensity, but there's also like you have to have fun with it. I think some of the guys that maybe don't reach their peak lose the fun. They're not having fun. It is a business, and I think that in any job you have to find ways not only to execute and to work hard, but also to enjoy being it. If it's going up to Josh's room and cutting it up about basketball for 15 minutes, you have to find levity in the day and ways to balance out the tough moments in any job.
And it's a game. And talking to you guys, and both of you told me today that you were out playing pickup basketball, and you're not playing pickup basketball to try to maximize your physical talent. You're out there playing because it's a game and it's fun. And that's really, I think, the theme that has run through what we talked about tonight. And it goes back to, what you guys are trying to do with your company. You're trying to bring back memories for people that, hey, basketball is fun. It's fun to be a fan. It's fun to be a player. It's fun to be involved in it. And you can share in that camaraderie, which makes basketball, I think, so unique, is that, yeah, it can be serious business, especially in the NBA, but ultimately it's a game, and it's a game that we all love, and it's a game that should be fun. And when you lose the fun, I think there's definitely danger in that. And I think the best coaches are able to find a balance between, we got to work hard and we got to be serious, but yet there's also moments where we have to remember that this is still a game and we're still doing it to have fun. And whether you're a player or a coach, if you get to the point where it's not fun anymore, then you got to wonder why you're doing it.
100%.
All right, we are coming up close to an hour and a half, so I want to give you guys one more opportunity to share with people how they can find out more about 19.9. So go back and give us the social media, give us the website again, tell us where we can find out more about what you guys are doing, where we can buy your products, and then I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
Yeah, no, really appreciate you having us on and giving us a platform. We'd be happy to come on anytime to chop it up. It's been fun talking.
Absolutely.
We more than anything just like to connect with people in the basketball community. If you're somebody like us, 19.9.com is our website where you can buy stuff. That's not really all it's about with us. You can get some of the storytelling on our podcast, which is on, Aaron, you can plug that.
It's on everywhere. We use Buzzsprout, but Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora recently, Google Podcasts. So anywhere where you listen to podcasts. And just like Josh said, just telling the story of college basketball, that's really become our focus and priority, is to just like tie into the products, help people understand and feel a part of a community.
Yep, at 99_threads for Twitter and at 99 for Instagram. We'd love to have you guys on board.
Awesome. Cool. Aaron and Josh, I cannot thank you guys enough for taking the time out of your schedule, spending an hour and a half with us tonight. It's been a lot of fun, both learning more about what you guys do at 19.9, but also I have not had a chance, I don't think at all, on this podcast to go back and talk vintage college basketball. So that was a lot of fun for me. I really appreciate that. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.